Opinions expressed in this episode are personal. They do not necessarily reflect the views of this streaming platform.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Let's Be Diverse. I am your host, Andrew Stoute. This episode is dedicated to all my loved ones who supported me through this journey. We hear a lot of people talking these days about how work is going, the changes of work, what the future looks like for work, and especially specifically with AI coming. So I wanted to delve into this today. So our topic today is the future of work, and my guest today is Rebecca Beaton. Welcome to the show, Rebecca. It is super awesome to have you on today.
Thanks for having me.
You're very, very welcome. How are things with you? What's new? What's going on? What's happening in your world? What's happening these days?
Oh, well, I just signed up for a triathlon for the first time. So I'm working on getting in shape, and I'm really enjoying that the weather's getting nice and I get to go outside, and it's forcing me to get outside and away from my computer, which is great.
That's awesome. What made you decide to get into the triathlon?
Well, my partner recently did a half Ironman in a Soyuz BC, and I was inspired to do something like it. There's all these crazy fit people that I just think are amazing. I would never do a half Ironman, no desire to, but really impressed by people that do that. And it just kind of got me fired up to try something different.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It doesn't take much it's those little things that sometimes motivate us to do certain things. So that's pretty cool that you're trying that. When is the triathlon?
In September 2nd in Vancouver.
Okay. Well, it's good to hear that you're taking on something that's challenging, something that's different. I'm sure there's a lot of nervousness, fear, not knowing the unknown is probably stuff that's you're kind of thinking a lot about. But sometimes when we do things that are scary, they kind of, like you said, motivate us to do these many things. So that's pretty awesome.
You got it.
Well, that is pretty awesome to hear that, and we wish you all luck. On behalf of the listeners, we wish you all luck for the triathlon. We look forward to hearing how you did.
Yeah, if I finish, that's a win.
Absolutely.
Aim and low.
Absolutely. So before we get into the nut and bolts of this conversation, I always have a fun question to ask my guests to get things going. Are you ready for yours today?
Sure am.
Okay. So my question for you today is, how would you use your extra time if you had 24 or 25 instead of 24 hours in a day?
There's so many options running through my head. I would get outside. I'm on a get outside kick. It's helping everything in my life and trickling into, it's like getting outside is very good for my mental health. I can be a highly anxious person. So it helps calm my nervous system and it improves everything. It helps me be more present with other people, helps me like myself more, helps me show up better in my work for my clients, like getting outside, being in nature. If there's sunshine, being in the sun, that's what I would do.
That I'd say is a pretty good choice. I mean, there's nothing like getting outside, enjoying the sun, enjoying the nice weather. I
almost said sleep.
Oh, you almost said sleep?
It was a tough choice.
I am not a winter guy, so I don't like, I'll go outside if I have to, but I'm not a guy that, lots of people go for walks and stuff like that in winter. I'm just not a cold weather guy. But yeah, summertime, I'm outside as much as I can and enjoying the weather. And it's nice to, even if you're cutting the grass or, whatever you're doing, but just being outside is nice. So I totally understand that for sure.
Especially in Saskatchewan, you have to take advantage when it's nice.
Yes, well, in Canada in general, I think you have to kind of take it in general for sure. So, well, thanks so much for having fun with me. I really appreciate you. And you were pretty quick on your answers, so that's pretty good, and I appreciate that. Why don't we start off with you telling us a little bit about you, your story, and your why?
Yes. Okay. So I'll start with I had over 30 different jobs before the age of 30. In fact, that the actual number is 34. Every once in a while, I remember another job and add it to the list. So the current running total is 34. And I was always looking for something that I wanted to do that really fulfilled me, which I know is something important to so many people. And that's why I changed around so much. And there were a lot of years, especially it got harder as I got older and, in my mid-20s and still not knowing what I wanted to do. So I was always trying different things. And that for me was my way of getting clarity on what I wanted to do. And I eventually ended up working with a coach who was my good friend's mom, who helped me clarify the kind of work I wanted to be doing. Up until then, the main kind of career work I'd been doing was environmental education. And I was doing that in nonprofits. I was also doing program management at different nonprofits. So that's really my background. And she helped me realize that I wasn't so passionate about helping people with the environment anymore because I felt like it wasn't really education wasn't getting us anywhere. And that I wanted to work with people on a deeper level to help them connect to themselves more and be more satisfied and fulfilled in their own lives, because I believe, I don't know if there's data and evidence to support this, but I think this is quite intuitive to a lot of us, is like the happier we are in our own lives and with ourselves, the more we have to give, right? And to help. And those things aren't necessarily separate too. Like a lot of the time, the satisfaction fulfillment can come through making an impact. So that's how I got into coaching. And I started off as a life coach. I got a certification in that. And I eventually niched in this area of career. So now I help people who are dissatisfied with their job to get clarity on what it is they want to do, like I did, in a very long way. And I like to help people do that faster. And part of that process of getting clarity and making a career transition is you do need to research what's out there and what's viable in terms of the future, right? What does the labor market look like? None of us know the future, but to consider that, what does it look like potentially with changes in technology and organizational structure? So when we make a decision, that's where this interest of mine comes in around the future of work.
I love all that, because what's interesting to me is it's not only when you're looking for work. I believe it's actually, when you have a job, and depending on the position that you have, because things are ever changing, you have to kind of be looking at the changes and adjust and adapt in every single way. So if you're continuously doing the same things and things are changing, well, then you're going to find it you're going to have a little bit of a struggle. So we have to adapt. We have to find ways to figure stuff out. And yes, there's going to be frustration. I always say it's not always sunshine and rainbows. So there's not going to be good, it's not always going to be good days. There's going to be those days that we're going to struggle. We're going to be frustrated, but it's the ability to adapt and find ways to change and make the correct changes when necessary.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. You nail it with using the word adapt. That is, if I had to pick one word that is most important to master in our careers at this point and to prepare for the future, it would be adaptability. Because work is less like in the past, it was picking a job at a company and then maybe staying there for the rest of your life, or maybe moving to one or two other companies that were similar. And then there were a lot of opportunities that don't exist today to move within companies and transition and grow over the course of your career. But now it's so different because there's so many options available to us. We might not have our needs met at one company and one place. In fact, most people don't. And so we don't need to go out and find that place that we want to work that's a good fit for us. We have to know who we are and what kind of work is a good fit for us. And then we need to continually go out and find it, maybe every couple of years. It depends. But it's very different than it used to look that way.
I love when you said transition, because I think that we've had to transition a little bit more. So you mentioned just before that, and I know my parents, they did it. They worked at companies they got their job and they worked for companies for 15, 20, some odd years. And they did that. And I could hear them coming home many times going, oh my God, I don't like this, or my boss did this, or this coworker did this, and I don't like, this, and I don't like that, and I don't like these procedures, and, but they stayed. So now, I mentioned adapting, we're a little bit more adapting to the transition and looking, okay, so I've done this job. So you said earlier you've done about 30 jobs, but I'm sure in a lot of them you took stuff that you learned from the different jobs and you transitioned them into your next job. So you took the things that you were good at and the things that would equal and as far as task going to allow you to do that next job, and then continue to do that. But years ago, people like my parents, they didn't do that. They just stayed there, whether they were happy or not. They stayed there and they did it. And so it changed dramatically over the years, for sure.
Yes, it's changed a lot. And I mean, part of that is due to how the structure of companies has changed. Yeah. A lot of companies they've just started to outsource more and more. Like in Canada, we have the Bay. I'm not sure if it's still around. I know it's been kind of slowly disappearing. But if we look at a company like the Bay, it used to do all of its resourcing, like sourcing materials, manufacturing, design, marketing, sales, storing in a warehouse. It used to do all those things. So there was a lot of stuff you could do within a company, whereas now it's shrunk and there's less and less middle management. There's more and more outsourcing. So part of that is due to the company structure, but part of it's also due to people wanting greater fulfillment in their work. Right? I think we've reached a point in our society of recognizing how important it is to be fulfilled in our work. And we have the luxury, a lot of the time, not everyone all the time by any means, but a lot of more people, let's just say, have the luxury of exploring different options. But then when there's challenges that come with that. There's always challenges, right? Like you're saying, sure. There's challenges with that. And so we don't want to just feel like we're hopping job to job. And like you were saying, building on the skills that you've had in the past to the next thing that you're doing when you transition. You want there to be some kind of thread that connects things together.
So I think we kind of delved into it, but I kind of want to go into this deeper. So, I'd like you to tell us, what is the future of work?
Let me get out my crystal ball. See what it tells me today. I love this question. There's a lot involved in this topic. There's no way I'm going to touch on everything. From my point of view and my clients and what I see in them and some of the research I've read, the biggest thing I can say is we don't really know what the future of work will look like. And the further into the future we go, right, there's a timeline, the more uncertain it becomes. So preparing for the unknown, maybe we'll talk more about that later, is something that everyone can do, every person, every organization, because things change so quickly now with advancing technology. Being prepared as much as possible for the uncertainty. But there are some things, we can guess about the future based on the past and past trends. When it comes to the future of work, there's kind of two schools of thought. about what AI is going to do to the workforce. And one school of thought is technology and AI is going to completely, leave so many people without jobs. Now, this is something that has been common throughout history. I was actually reading a book. A lot of people probably know this book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I was rereading it recently. And this isn't even related to the topic of the book, but I noticed he talks about in his preface what he wrote, I think back in the 1960s, about his concern for technology and automation and how that would impact people's ability how that would impact the labor market and the availability of jobs. And I thought that was so interesting that this idea has been there for so long that technology is going to replace jobs. So one school of thought is that AI, yes, this has been there forever or a long time. Technology replaces jobs and there's always new jobs created. But there's a school of thought that says AI is different. AI is actually going to replace jobs and there aren't going to be enough new jobs to pop up to replace them. The other school of thought is, nope, this is the same as everything throughout history, that we're going to have new jobs that come up. Yes, a lot of things are going to change. Right. Some jobs will be eliminated. Some jobs will be augmented by AI and others will still remain fairly similar. But we're not going to have jobs disappear and there's going to be new ones that come up. So personally, I'm of the thought there's going to be new jobs, but who knows, right? Another thing is a trend towards outsourcing and contract labor. So we're already seeing that. We've seen that progression over the 20th century and the early 21st century. So we're likely to see a lot more outsourcing, contract labor. There's trends towards retiring later and working longer. So that's something else too, with more age diverse workforces that we're likely to just see more and more of. And the need for soft skills is increasing and likely to continue increasing with the changes in technology and advances in AI, things like strategy, relationship building, problem solving, adaptability. These kinds of skills are likely to become more and more in demand, and they already have over recent years. So again, we don't know, but I think there are trends we can look at, and I'm a big fan of looking to history to see what might happen in the future. I think that's kind of like the best source of information we have. So based off of history, those are the kinds of things that I've noticed.
It's interesting that you said to me like contract work. So what I'm noticing a lot lately is I'll talk to a lot of people, whether it's in leadership or HR or whatever, and they're transitioning. So we mentioned that word earlier. So they are leaving organizations and they're transitioning and they're going out on their own and they're starting their own contract and they're doing contract work. So it's interesting that you say that, because I do see it. I do see a lot of people, especially in HR, or in leadership, that are saying that they're, for whatever reason, they needed a change. They felt like things were not going in the direction that they liked, and they wanted to do something on their own. And then they're being hired by companies to do a lot of the work that they were doing for the specific company that they were working for, but it's just on their own. So I love that you said that, because I could just totally see. I think I talked to 5 people this week, and 3 of them were that same scenario, that they left the company and decided to go out on their own.
Oh, did you ask them why?
For whatever reason, either that there was many reasons, but I would say probably the big reason is that they were with companies that they were finding that they were just not able to. They had ideas and stuff like that they wanted to kind of put forth, and they found that in a lot of situations that they there was a stopgap. So like they could do certain things, but certain things they weren't able to. It's like, oh no, we've tried, the same famous lines, oh, we tried this before, it didn't work, or, we're not going to do that, or, we don't believe that, it's not part of our values, or what have you. And, a lot of them, specifically one of them said, that they didn't go with their values, but then, they asked them, well, what are the values of the company? And she asked another leader who was telling her she couldn't do this, and they couldn't even tell her what the values of of the organization, what they were. So that was just kind of like a sign for her to say, listen, maybe it's time for me to go out on my own, where I can do my own things, and I can still do the same things I'm doing, but I can design my values, and I can work along with those values and structures and commitment and, hard work. And
I'm so curious about the future with contracting of what's going to benefit the employee and the employer with that, because there are a lot of people who are moving towards contracting or consulting, especially later on in their career, not necessarily early on. And employers like not providing people the growth opportunities that they want, and not having that flexibility and space for innovation that you're talking about, or not having the communication around these are our goals and this is your part in it.
Yep. So
people are getting frustrated, and like, I'm so curious how that's all going to play out. Like, is it because, historically, as far as I know, companies want to have talent and retain talent. Right. Like, it's expensive to hire new people.
Right. Exactly.
But if they're constantly getting new contract workers, I don't know. I'm so curious how that's all going to play out, because a lot of companies are not. What I learned from my clients is a lot of companies are really failing people in terms of meeting the goals that they have. Yeah. So how is that going to play out for companies and their goals? I don't know.
So I read somewhere a couple of weeks ago that this person was a financial individual, and he's in finance with a huge organization, and he was saying that companies would actually prefer to have a contractor rather than an employee, because if they have the employee, then they have all these financial obligations as far as benefits and stuff like that. So they have those obligations where if you have a contract, you don't have to give those benefits and those obligations. You're just paying them for the job and the work that they do. So now this is his opinion, but it was just interesting to read it to see that, companies would prefer, in his opinion, companies prefer to have a contractor rather than an employee, than an actual employee.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that as well. And I understand that. And I wonder, this is kind of newer. So I just wonder about the longevity of that.
Yeah.
Right? About not having people who are dedicated to one company. I'm open to whatever. If it works to have lots of contractors moving around, if that works for everyone, that's great.
Right.
It's just, that's why I'm just curious about it, because I don't know.
Well, I think people are just going to have to be innovative and creative. And, we'll use this word that you and I have used a bit so far, adapt. People are going to have to adapt. So if you're going to get into consulting, you're going to have to adapt, and you're going to have to notice, if there's any changes. You can't do the same thing for 20 years. You're going to have to look and see how things are going and then make the necessary changes when you do it. I mean, you're in business yourself, and I'm sure you've made changes as you've gone, and there's things
every week.
Yeah. So there you go. So,
I'm teasing, but yeah, a lot.
But you know what I mean? Like you're making, you need to, okay, this is, this was working really well, or this is not working. So let's, maybe if I adjust something a little bit, maybe it'll work. So we kind of got into it a little bit, but I want to get your thoughts. How does the future of work change what a career or what the word career means for an organization?
Well, there's a lack of definity around that, right? Like, I think just based on our conversation. So yeah, it could look like more contract workers. Right. On the other hand, though, it could look like, and there's probably going to be a combination of both, right? Like, there's no one perfect way or right way or best way to have a career. And we're all just experimenting at the end of the day as individuals, as organizations. It's, sometimes I think that's obvious, but I think it's easy to forget that. Because on the other hand, there's also people, there is a trend towards longer careers. Like, we see the age of retirement getting later and later and later. So there is the potential for people to be longer, like staying longer at companies. There was an article in the World Economic Forum about preparing for an age diverse workforce. And it says that in America, there's a quarter of men and 17% of women over 65 who are expected to still be in the labor market by 2032. So this is a pretty big shift from what we've seen before. And people are potentially going to be having careers that are 50 years long, right? So that's something to think about. What a career looks like within an organization, we're likely to see people want more flexibility. So there was, of course, the huge shift to work from home during COVID. What ends up emerging now, so I hear from pretty much every client I talk to, they want a hybrid work setup. The research is also showing that people or teams perform better when they are in office and meeting maybe 3 to 4 days a week. They're able to learn from each other, right? Feed off each other's energy. There's more of that growth potential, which is what a lot of people are looking for. They're looking for growth. They want to learn. They're thirsty for that. So having this kind of flex, the other thing is people want a flexible work schedule. So there's been a shift, and this is probably just like the start of the trend to have life fit into your work, or sorry, have work fit into your life, not the other way around. Right. Yeah. And then, like we were talking about with people coming and going potentially more frequently. So it's interesting, like with contract workers. So it's interesting. There's the potential for people to stay longer in companies if companies are wanting to facilitate that. And if there's a benefit to it for them in terms of upskilling and retraining people. But then there's also this trend towards contract work. So it'll be interesting, I think, just to see how these things play out, where companies end up going in terms of finding a balance maybe between those two things, or if there is a huge trend or pull towards one or the other. Right. From my perspective, it doesn't seem clear at this point in time.
Right. What I'm seeing is, or what I think is, as far as career goes, I think just the meaning, I think that career has changed. So what a career for one person might not mean the same for another, but I do feel that it's changed dramatically. And, a lot of, years ago, you'd probably say, career means moving up and making more money. But, career for some other people are, getting into an organization that, that believes in growth, that believes in workplace harmony, that believes in employee wellness. Those are the things I think that people are kind of looking for. Yes, Rebecca, we want to, we want to make money. We need to put food on the table. We need to pay our bills. We get that, but there's more. I think people are wanting more. And like I said, career means more to somebody. So when they're looking for a job, they want to know, okay, well, if they're looking to make a change and they're going from one company to another, they want to see, like I said, what's what are the possibilities for them? What's in it for them? Not just the paycheck, but
got it.
What's it like working for this, this employer? What's it like working for that manager? What's the work life dynamic? What, how is the team? Is it, are they outgoing and friendly, or are they, do they nitpick at everything, and are they, they're gougers? Like, you want to know all this stuff.
Absolutely. Yes. That is so true, that people are looking for that culture that really fits for them. But a lot of people they're looking for growth. It is the biggest thing. I recently read a report there's a company that I think they're called LHH or LLH. I can't remember. Anyways, but they do this survey of like 30,000 employees, 23 different countries, to figure out, what people are looking for. And the biggest thing they found, and the biggest competitive advantage they found for companies, is to provide those opportunities for growth and movement. And a lot of that would tie into the culture, right? And what kinds of people are around you, what your manager is like, are your ideas for new innovations within where you're working being accepted. So you're absolutely right. And then also, like the flexibility, and mental health and wellness. Yes. Like burnout is such a big thing. And what's interesting about burnout is it's not necessarily caused by the number of hours that we're working. So there is a bit of a trend towards a 4-day work week, for example. Right. But there's a lot of other stuff that causes burnout. One of it is feeling like you have autonomy over your work, or the example that you were just giving, like where you have ideas of how things could be improved, but they're not being heard, or there's stuff outside of your control, right, that you're potentially getting blamed for. So there's a lot of stuff contributing to that. So companies need to be open to the feedback from their employees. And there also needs to be wellness and mental health programs, because that's what people need to thrive in today's workforce. And there needs to be compassion towards time off. Right. To take care of your needs outside of work.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, if we think about culture changes, I mean, you just mentioned wellness programs. People have to, I think both organizations need to understand the importance of it, but also too, employees within the organization need to understand the importance of it, because even if you're not going through any mental health issues, it's important for you to understand what your coworker could possibly be going through. So, as a diversity and inclusion guy, one of the things that is very important to me that makes me think about it, or has made me think about it as I've gotten older, is assumption. So assuming something about someone, but it's actually not even close to the case. And that's the culture changes, of changing that mindset to say, instead of being like, oh, that person doesn't want to come to work today, compared to, they haven't been at work for a few weeks now. I hope everything is okay. I know it's personal. I don't need to know what it is. But I just want to know that they're okay. Mm-hmm. There's a total shift there. And then of course, different ethnic groups, years ago, it wasn't like that, but now you can get, on your team, a team of 5 people, you can get somebody from Canada, somebody from the US, somebody from Italy, somebody from Thailand, and someone from India, out of your 5-member team. And then, so you have to figure out, the culture, what's the different cultures, what's the different backgrounds. I was talking to somebody the other day and telling them that, myself, I grew up, my parents were mixed. So my dad was from Barbados, so he was Black, and my mother was from Montreal, Quebec, and she was white. She's French Canadian. So growing up, different, they had a different way of looking at life. They, their food, the food that they, that they both eat we all ate the same foods, but the foods that they were brought up compared to what my mom was brought up compared to what my dad was brought up in was totally different. Their way of thinking, their way of parenting was totally different. So we have to take that into consideration when we are talking about, the culture changes and the future of work.
Mm-hmm. Changing, how do you think is a good way to change that culture around mental health?
So as far as mental health, I think it's important to have those discussions, and I feel like it's important. So first, I think it's communication, and I think it's check-ins. So, and just helping people understand, mental health a little bit better, and what, if you're not going through what possibly somebody could possibly going through, you're never going to get the full extent, or you're never going to fully understand what someone is going through, but just to have that authenticity and genuine care for your coworker is super important. We all know, and people say, I mean, you're not going to be, maybe the best, the best buddies that you were, like you talked, you have your friends that you've been hanging out with and exercising with and stuff. That, that's a close-knit group. You may not be as close-knit group with your coworkers, but it's just to have that care and compassion for that individual is super important. It just makes that work life so much more. I talk about a safe work environment, and that's the type of thing that you want to have. You want to have that environment that's safe. You don't want to be in an environment where you're like, oh my God, like I gotta go to that. I gotta go to that place again today. You want to be excited to be going into that place.
Yeah, I feel like this is on the I hope for the future of work, right?
Oh, yeah,
greater inclusion, people feeling safe at work. Yeah, and as you're talking, I'm thinking like, this is a lot of like why I do the work that I do too, is like, because when we like where we're at and we're satisfied with ourselves and our own life, we have more capacity to be compassionate towards others. Absolutely. Like that's just the way it is. So there's so many levels, right? That it works from like an organizational level, individual level, smaller groups within an organization, like, but it's cool that we're having conversations like this.
It certainly is, for sure. So you mentioned earlier that you've had quite a few different careers. My question to you is, what is your favorite story from your career?
Do you want like a funny story or?
Sure.
Like a more, this is the life lesson I learned.
Sure. I can take a funny story. I like to. I enjoy a funny story.
Okay. So I can be a fairly random person. Now I wish I could say all the jobs in my 30 jobs built on each other and, I learned professional skills. No, I've had a lot of just like random jobs. This is the thing with a lot of my clients too, like, in the meantime jobs, I call them. Oh, yeah. Right? So you get stuff while you're working towards something else. So randomly, when I was in university, I decided I wanted to work at a hot dog stand.
Okay.
I was like, that would be a really random job. And I liked the idea that I could work by myself and just interact with random people.
Sure.
So that's one of my favorite jobs that I love that I did. And I just walked around to different hot dog stands and walked up to them and asked if they were hiring. And eventually I got pointed over to the one guy who is hiring downtown Vancouver on the corner of Granville and Seymour, I want to say. Yeah, it's right in front of the London Drugs there for anyone who knows Vancouver listening. And got a job at the hot dog stand there. Got paid cash and sometimes in weed. I actually don't smoke weed, so I never used that. It was quite funny. The guy who who worked there. He was quite a character. And sometimes we'd drive the hot dog stand to film sets around Vancouver, and we would sell hot dogs on the break. And yeah, I just really loved that job and the strangeness of it.
So the thing that makes me that resonates with me with your story is that I enjoy is one of my core values is rapport building, and that just signifies core. If you can't explain rapport building, that story pretty much explains it in a nutshell. How important it is, like you said, you enjoy talking with people and conversing with people and meeting new people. And like you said, you were driving around to different sets and stuff, and and meeting different individuals. And so, I would say it was was it about the hot dog selling? Maybe not, but it was, from what it sounds like, you were enjoying having conversations with people and meeting people.
Mm-hmm.
And that is super valuable. I can't even stress how much importance that it is. And
I like that you nailed that. Yeah.
And I feel like I don't think that people do it enough is what I'm thinking.
Well, everything in career, any opportunity we want or come across, like, it's the chance of it coming from an online job posting, very small. Having conversations with people equals possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the first time I've said that, but that's like why I do what I do, is to help people see possibilities. And when you talk with people, you see possibilities. And one thing at the hot dog stand is I loved that I met people different than myself. Like, I am a white woman coming from Vancouver, from a good upbringing.
Yeah.
So I've loved experiences in my life that get me to meet people who are very different from myself. Yeah. And that was one thing, like, I had different friends who lived on the street down there who like rotated on the corner that the hot dog stand was on. And there was like a rotation that was organized, and I got to like know some of the people who were living on the downtown east side and different regulars that came to the hot dog stand. I absolutely loved that. So it wasn't even for a networking purpose, but it just helped to expand my perspective and get to know and understand different people and their stories. And empathy, we're coming back to compassion, empathy for others, like all that stuff. The more experiences we have, the more people we meet, the more empathy and compassion we have for other people when we understand where they're coming from. Yeah. So yeah, I love that.
And just, and what I love too, Rebecca, is you were having these conversations with people, you were getting to know them, but you didn't make any assumptions about them. Like, you saw them and you didn't automatically make an assumption before you even began the conversation. You were willing to get to have a conversation with them and get to know them before making a split decision, which is what a lot of people do, is they make an assumption about somebody before they even talk to them. And
well, I definitely do that too. But yes, I like to also be curious about people. Yeah.
That's where I'm getting at, is that some people do that, but they don't have a conversation at all. You have the conversation to get to know them and understand how, their life and their lifestyle and their culture and that, and you, to the point where you were seeing people and you're having conversation with them regularly, which is for me, that's pretty cool. I think that you, like I said, as far as rapport building and getting to know people, that is, if I was going to write a definition of that, that is it to a T.
Yeah. Yeah. Conversations and curiosity. And I would say that is what leads to me being able to find jobs. I've been able to find jobs in my sleep, basically. Yeah. Like opportunities that come along, and it's not the intention, right? Like I I love meeting random people. But I also want to say, like, I see that with my clients again, like when they get out there and just have conversations, opportunities arise, possibilities arise. You don't have to know ahead of time where a conversation is going to lead. Sometimes they fall flat. That's okay.
Absolutely.
And sometimes they go somewhere to somewhere that you never even thought of. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts today?
Oh, well, I think going back to the thinking about the future of work, it's something that no matter what career we're in or industry we're considering moving into is something that we need to research and look at what have been the trends in that industry in the past and what are likely to be those trends in the future. What are other people predicting? Because, for example, if we're going into something like becoming an analyst, that's going to be something that's either eliminated or really augmented by AI. And so we want to make sure we have an understanding of how that might change. Or I recently had a client going into communications, and we had a long conversation about, okay, what might be the potential changes in this industry in the future? What are the changes that are even happening right now? And that might look really different. It might look like you doing a lot less writing and a lot more of you using AI tools to do your writing. And is that something you want to do? So whether we feel secure in our job right now or we're looking to make a change, being aware of the trends and staying on top of that in our work is really, really important. Like the biggest thing for the future of work is that we don't know. So preparing for the unknown, staying on top of trends, staying current is huge.
I totally agree with you. I think it's super important to do your research, checking on trends and reading on stuff, and not just going on assumptions.
Yes,
understanding that there is going to be some changes. There's going to be you're going to have to adapt, but you need to keep track of what's going on. I myself every day just go on a job board. I pick a job board and I just read all the jobs that are on there, and I read what people are looking for, the descriptions, and I study the job descriptions to see, what that company is offering, what they're saying, what they're offering to prospective candidates, and not for myself, but just for my own knowledge to see what's out there. And it's interesting to do that. And I can go on and on about the stuff that I'm seeing on those, but
that's so cool that you do that. I want to have like a side conversation now with you about that.
you need to do. I think you need to do that to see what's going, like you said, what's going on, what's out there, and picking something that's going to make you excited to go into as far as a career and build and grow and that type of thing. So
yeah. Do we have time for me to add one more note?
Absolutely.
On that? Yeah. I love that idea. And to another thing, so I just see so many people when they aren't sure of what they want to do, looking at online job postings and getting really discouraged by it. So before you're looking at what you want to do, it's really important to step back and look at who you are, what you're best at, what engages and energizes you, what skills engage and energize you, what drives you, and like put all that information down on a piece of paper, and then looking at what's out there. And you can do that with online job postings, but you can also do that by LinkedIn search and looking at people on LinkedIn, as well as different companies, and just looking at, what people are doing at different companies. And that's another approach as well. But if you don't know who you are first and what you have to offer and what you want, and you go and look at online job postings, it's really depressing and overwhelming. So taking that time to step back and self-reflect is so important.
Rebecca, I want to take the time to thank you for coming on today. Like, this has been such a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. You are a knowledgeable and innovative individual. You've come a long way, as from what I can see in your career, to develop into what you are today. And I think all those life experience, not just your life experiences, but your career experiences, have got you to the table today. And if I was going to use a word to describe you, I would say adaptable, because you've found a way to adapt yourself in so many different ways, and now you're thriving in what you do. So thank you so much for taking the time to
thanks, Andrew. I just fist pumped for everyone that couldn't see that. Adaptable, yes.
On behalf of myself and my guest Rebecca, I'd like to thank you all for listening today. And until next time, be safe. And remember, everybody, that if we all work together, we can accomplish anything.
You have been listening to Let's Be Diverse with Andrew Stoute. To stay up to date with future content, hit subscribe.